Welcome to Shannons Club TV, the show where all motoring enthusiasts can revisit Australian motoring history on the road and in competition. We've had a terrific response from these paired histories, so please keep your comments coming on the Shannons Club website.
Now, coming up on the show, we'll get the latest news from the Shannons auctions team, and we meet Bernadette Bell with her ultra-rare Australian-delivered Chevrolet. But right now, let's take a look at the car that Chevrolet would have liked to replace the Holden, the Chevy II.
There was a moment in 1960 when Holden should have become redundant. If the first Falcon was an indication, Detroit was now building the right cars for Australia. And even if the rear-engine Chevrolet Corvair Compact was not the right car to replace the Holden, its conventional 1962 Chevy II stablemate should have been. It was stylish and offered the choice of 4 and 6 cylinder engines, a real plus for frugal Aussie buyers. The engineering was as simple as the Falcon's, yet it offered extra space exactly when and where it was needed as Australian baby boomers grew into big, healthy teens. Its extra 200 kilograms over the Falcon should have made it so much tougher for local conditions. Mark, the Chevy II, even as the upmarket Nova, was not a car you would expect to show up on Aussie racetracks as a Mustang replacement.
No, and that was exactly Norm Beechey's publicity-driven strategy, to bring in a Chevy II Nova to race here in 1966. Keep in mind, back in those days, any shiny new American muscle car attracted an enormous amount of media buzz and press coverage, and that was gold for Norm's sponsors. But beyond the publicity angle, here was a pretty compact car with a big 327 V8 in it, shoehorned in by the factory. It certainly posed a potential threat to the Mustangs.
And although the Chevy II never matched Falcon sales in the US, it was still a popular car. A small shipment of US-built right-hand drive examples were offered in Australian showrooms. In 1962, it was priced at $4,300 with basic trim, rubber floor mats and no heater. A comparable Holden was just $2,446. The locally manufactured XL Falcon Deluxe was $2,600, and a new locally assembled Valiant with its high-performance 225 engine was just over $2,700. The locally assembled compact Fairlane V8 cost the same as the imported Chevy II, which showed how little Detroit understood the local market. One of the few local road tests noted that the tall, skinny cross plies scraped the wheel arches under cornering, caused by excessive sideways movement in the monoplate rear springs. What wasn't revealed at the time was that Holden chassis engineers were in the US expressing grave doubts that these new US unitary structures were tough enough for Australia. As the first local Falcons fell apart at huge shame and cost to Ford, there was no mention of a local Chevy II or Nova ever again. Mark, even though Australians would not be offered another Chevy II or Nova by Holden, the presence of the Nova on the racetrack did help Holden.
Yeah, well, it sure did. I mean, up until then, the 327 V8 was seen as like a big, sort of yank tank engine. But this established a real high-performance image for this engine in Australia, which, if you think about it, was perfectly timed for the introduction of the HK GTS 327 Monaro in 1968. Norm Beechey's famous 1966 Chevy II Nova holds the distinction of being the only V8-powered car to have defeated Pete Gagan's almost invincible 1965 Ford Mustang, a feat Norm was never able to achieve in his own Mustang. Beechey's selection of Chevy's handsomely styled compact was an inspired choice for several reasons. It had a relatively light curb weight and similar wheelbase, track and body dimensions. But the big bonus was a stout 327 cubic inch or 5.4 litre small block V8 that was more than half a litre larger than his Ford rival. Joe, Holden would have been well aware of the challenges facing Norm Beechey in making the Chevy II competitive on the racetrack. Yet history shows that the car's local appearance was actually perfectly timed for Holden.
You could almost hear the Holden engineer saying, just as well it's him, not us. They knew how weak that car was structurally. They'd narrowly missed having it replace the Holden. By now that they were well and truly involved in producing a new Holden, and wouldn't believe their luck that Beechey was going out to show that the 327 that they had hidden ready for the Monaro was going to be displayed in the best possible circumstances on the racetrack.
Yeah.
They would have been ecstatic on 2 counts.
Yep, perfect timing. Even though it had 4-wheel drum brakes, on paper, the new Chevy II's raw muscle car credentials made it look like a Mustang beater, particularly as it was armed with a full-house Traco race engine from the US with a stomping 480 horsepower on tap. Given its obvious power advantage, the fact that Norm was able to beat Geoghegan's Mustang only once in so many memorable races between them says plenty about Geoghegan's sublime driving talent and his mechanic John Shepherd's fastidious preparation. It also highlights the ongoing struggle Norm faced in making full use of the Chevy's power advantage, which wasn't helped by alarming body flex and some wayward handling that took time to tame, and the need to run the original 4-wheel drum brakes, which had a tendency to fade due to extreme heat. Even so, Beechey raced this fabulous American muscle car across 3 seasons spanning 1966 to 1968, during which time it won 36 races and shared centre stage in many a memorable battle with his arch-rival Geoghegan. These included the nail-biting Australian Touring Car Championship showdowns at Bathurst in 1966 and Lakeside in 1967, when the title was still being decided by a single race each year. On both occasions, Norm sprinted away to early leads, only to succumb to the superiority of the Geoghegan-Mustang combination.
Don't forget, you can join the conversation on the Shannons Club forums with a host of interesting topics.
I'm Bernadette Bell and this is my 1962 Chevy Nova. She's known as a Chevy II. My Chevy Nova is a very rare model. Apparently there are only very few of them brought to Australia in 1962. They brought them out here to compete with the Falcon, so we think it's one of only very few in Australia. This Chevy Nova, I bought it 5 years ago at auction. The lady, it was a one-owner car and she had received it for her 21st birthday, and I just couldn't leave it at the auction and not take her home. Original miles are 26,000 miles and I've done perhaps 2,000 since I've owned her. I only take her out on club days to car shows. My Chevy is known as a mint green with a white roof, and I have put on the white wall tyres to match. She is an original car. It's a 6-cylinder engine. It's known as a Red Motor 194. They're a little bit shorter than the traditional Chevrolet Bel Airs, so they release them as an errand car or a family vacation car, and I find her really easy to drive. We're very interested in cars. My husband collects Chevrolet cars and trucks, and this one was really bought for me to have a drive and take it to car shows. I have all our vehicles insured with Shannons, and we've had no trouble with them over the 10 years we've had our vehicles. I really love my car. It's a great colour, and when I take it to shows or just up the street for a cappuccino, everyone wants to stop and ask me, what sort of car is it? And when they do look at her inside, they're impressed by her originality.
Shannons National Auctions Manager Chris Borrabin joins us for Hammer Time. Hi Chris.
Hi Joe, Mark.
Welcome to the show, mate.
Thank you.
Chris, this car, I'm not sure that Australians would even believe us if we said that a dozen was sent here, built as right-hand drive and sold here. Just amazing. They scattered and nobody really knew why they were here or what they were doing here. They're now being discovered. We know of 2. We know the wagon's being restored. We featured
that's right.
the sedan in absolute showroom condition as it was when it was delivered. A very unusual situation for you because you just don't see the cars at all. No. Yet we know, as a right-hand drive, genuine Australian delivery, they have some significance.
Massive significance, I would have thought.
Again, we got to try and find some, find some more. I mean, as you said, there's probably under 12 that were delivered here to Australia, and I think probably most viewers wouldn't realise that we actually had them Australian delivered. But yeah, to be able to find the 2 that were brought in back in 1962, and out of probably 10 or 12, that's quite incredible today, I think.
So the values, I mean, Chevrolets of that era now, even the local ones, are really performing quite strongly. Those cars have to follow suit, don't they? Being a Chev and being not only right-hand drive, but built in America, but for this market.
Look, I think for our Chev enthusiasts, it's probably something a little bit different, and I think to have one of 10 or 12 cars that were brought into Australia back in that time and right-hand drive. There's the appeal there, if you've got a complete Chevrolet collection, well, that's one of those cars that you've probably got to add to the collection, I think.
Yes.
And I guess a buyer would relate to the two-door, because Beechey was racing the 327 two-door version here. A two-door version, I imagine, would be pretty desirable locally as well, given Beechey's successes.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've seen a few imports come in over the years from the US. Yeah, so we have seen some two-doors come in. Again, not too many. We don't see too many Chevy 2s around. But
that surprises me, because it's a really, really good-looking car, compact car, big V8, very much in that American muscle car tradition.
Yeah, we probably tend to see more of a Novas out here.
Well, what's happening is that the values are being pushed up quite high in the States. The V8 version, even the 6-cylinder cars, and there's a lot of aftermarket parts to improve their faults, because they were a fairly sloppy car. And I'm wondering if it's going to have that appeal. It's kicked on a little bit by Beechey's association, and whether that car does have a future here as an import.
In a two-door version, I think, I think, similar to the Sprint, the two doors, will always have an appeal. Whether the 4 doors follow suit, it's difficult to say.
So have I got more chance of winning the lottery than perhaps finding one of the other 8 or 10 Australian compliance cars?
Could well be. It could be that sort of...
wow, what a rarity.
Well, thanks, Chris. This has been one of the rarest cars we've ever had to talk about, and what a great story. Thank you.
Amazing.
And remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest auction news on the Shannons Club website.
Now, Joe, we've talked about the design integrity of these unitary constructions, but the one that really sticks in my head about this car was Norm Beechey fitted a pad bolt on the inside of his driver's door on his race car, something you'd normally find on a farm gate or a shed door. He had that locked because he was worried with the amount of chassis flex that the door was going to spring open when it went around corners. I mean, just shows how much these cars used to flex.
Well, you're right, Mark. That unitary body was a real concern because up until then, General Motors was just building the same old chassis and just changing the body every year. And here they had to design a whole new car from scratch. And the problem was that they didn't realise how different the conditions were in Australia. They looked at the EK Holden and thought, wow, they would be very grateful to have this Chevy too. And we would have been. I mean, if you look at Bernadette's car, what a stunning car that was for 1962. Just a beautiful car. But the gap in the knowledge between what we knew at Holden and what Chevrolet knew on unitary construction was too great. And it was actually a real turning point. The Americans just said, you guys better do it. We'll give you a technical centre and you just keep going the way you're going, because the gap's just too big.
And that car, it really needed more strength beneath what was a beautiful skin.
That's right, exactly right. So remember, you can read more about this fascinating story on the Shannons Club website, and we'll catch you next time on Shannons Club TV.